Hello and welcome to this tutorial video on integrating Squared Up with ServiceNow. My name is Matthew Long and I'm joined today by my colleague Sam Lord.
Hello.
Sam is from our engineering team and works very closely on our WebAPI integration, which is what we'll be using today to integrate data from ServiceNow into Squared Up dashboards along with all of our SCOM monitoring information. Now, if you haven't seen Squared Up before, or you have, but you haven't seen the WebAPI capabilities before, I'd highly recommend that you go and watch our recent coffee break webinar, link in the description below. It talks about this tile and its capabilities and how this all works, but the short 10-second pitch here is that the WebAPI tile allows us to integrate data from third-party sources via JSON-based REST APIs and display that information on demand when you view a dashboard inside Squared Up. So we're not syncing data, we're not like storing that data from ServiceNow into SCOM or into another database. This is literally no extra agents, no extra storage. Pull that data when you need it and display it live along with your monitoring information and any other system you might be pulling into Squared Up as well. Okay, so for a bit of role play for this, and just to make it a bit more interesting than a standard sort of boring presentation, I'm going to play the sort of boss or the person who wants his dashboards and wants this information. And I'm going to come to Sam basically and throw requirements his way and make him do my bidding. So that's not normally the relationship, so this should be a bit of fun. But Sam, effectively, I'm getting pushed back here. I need a dashboard that shows me what's happening in my environment, like what incidents and changes have I got. I've already got way too many tools. I don't want another screen, another tool I have to go and look at. I'm happy with Squared Up. I'm using that right now. Other teams are using it too. Can you show that information inside Squared Up? I want to see changes, incidents, and what's been happening in the last 3 months.
Yep, we can do all of that. First thing we're going to do is check our ServiceNow permissions. We just want to see that everything in here is configured properly. So usually, if you're doing ServiceNow queries, you'll actually be using a custom user just for all of these queries. But for the sake of our development instance, we'll be using the system administrator.
Okay.
And of course, the system administrator definitely has permissions, but just the one to look out for is you'll want the web service admin role. And so if we click edit here, then you can see on the left-hand side here, we would have the web service admin if it wasn't already in. Of course, it's already here. So that's all looking good there.
Okay, so that means that the credentials that we're going to give to Squared Up effectively have the rights inside ServiceNow they need to be able to query all the different ServiceNow data.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And then the one other thing that we need to check is that the table that we'll be accessing has the allow web service access role ticked.
Okay.
So we're just going to jump into the change request table just to check that that's there.
So presumably the idea here with ServiceNow is that if you had a sensitive table that you didn't want people to be able to see via WebAPI requests, you could then restrict that by saying, actually, this should not be shared out.
Yep, exactly. So this is usually enabled by default, but always worth checking before you go and do a request, because if you spend half an hour trying to configure something only to find that the reason it wasn't working was because this was unticked, that's quite a fun one.
That sounds like you're speaking from experience there, Sam.
Oh, yes. So that is all looking quite good.
Okay.
Next thing we need to do is go back into this providers page. And we already have this broken ServiceNow provider, but let's create a new one.
Okay. There's a lot more fields now. So you've changed the provider type over to OAuth.
Yep.
Okay.
I've given it a name, ServiceNow, and the grant type will be password for this.
Okay.
You might be wondering, how do we know it's password? And so there's some really comprehensive documentation on the ServiceNow platform. It's just worth stressing that if you are setting up some of these OAuth providers, you're going to have to be either familiarized with the documentation or at least speak to the application owner and have them look up this sort of thing for you.
Right, okay.
Here the grant type can either be password or refresh token. Now refresh token is more of an internal one. Password is the one that we want to use right here. And then we can see all of the information that we'll need to pass along with that.
Okay.
So we'll just jump straight back in. We need a base URL here. So I'm just going to copy that. That's just our ServiceNow developer instance.
Okay.
And then
so that'll be unique to our customers, right? So each one will have a different URL they'll need to jump to.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And we need a token URL as well.
Okay.
So this will be similar for all of all ServiceNow users.
Okay.
It's /OAuth_token.do.
Okay.
And this is, of course, also specified in the documentation.
Right, there we go. So that's how we find it. Okay, cool. So that so the base URL is the one that we use for requests. The token URL is how we're going to authorize this provider. And then the username and password is the username and password for the user that we configured inside ServiceNow.
Yeah, so that's the username and password, in this case, for the system administrator, which obviously you would definitely want to use a specific, REST API user with just the permissions that they want, and not the one with total admin privileges.
Okay, so yeah, it's definitely make sure you use the right one there. And
our
then
next step is to add the client ID and client secret,
right,
which we haven't made yet. So let's just jump straight in to ServiceNow again.
Okay.
And in the application registry, we'll be creating a new application, which is an OAuth API endpoint for external clients, because we want our external client, Squared Up, to talk to ServiceNow.
Okay, so that name there, you can give it anything, but obviously make it nice and descriptive so you know what this particular app is.
Yep.
Okay.
So most of this is irrelevant for creating an API endpoint for Squared Up. Really all you need to fill in is the name, and the client ID will fill in itself, and if you leave the client secret blank, it will choose a nice secure one for you.
Okay, that's good.
So we just created that and jumped back into it so that we can copy out this client secret.
Okay. So if you ever lose that or need to recreate it, you can come back into Squared Up into ServiceNow and get those values back if you need to. Or rather, your ServiceNow admin can. So this is something that likely you won't have access to, so you'll probably need to engage your ServiceNow subject matter expert to be able to get access to these.
Yep. And the authorization scope here, in the case of ServiceNow, it's just not used, so we leave it blank and click Add Provider. And when you see that green tick next to an OAuth provider, that means that it has indeed been authenticated successfully and has an access token.
Cool, okay.
So I'm going to jump straight into a new dashboard.
Okay.
And let's call this Service Now, because that's what we'll be addressing today.
Okay.
Right, we're just going to jump straight into a new WebAPI tile, and we'll be using the ServiceNow provider which we made. So we're making a scalar tile here, which is just a single piece of information. So this will be a number of incidents.
Okay, so this is going to show me like the last incidents in the last 3 months, say. So the HTTP mode panel, what you're seeing here is panels basically that let us specify the configuration. The initial piece we put in was the URL, so the table, the incidents table, get us all incidents information. And now what we're doing is populating the extra parameters we want to send to ServiceNow, like the fact that we want to only have incidents from the last sort of 3 months. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Cool. So this here is the ServiceNow documentation.
Yep, so I'm just flipping back to this to make sure I'm getting all of my parameters correct.
Okay.
So all of this documentation is really useful for setting up your ServiceNow queries.
Right, okay. Yeah. The thing that's worth noting is that WebAPI tile can be used to connect to any JSON-based REST web service. So the tile Squared Up itself doesn't know anything about the ServiceNow API specifically, hence why we're having to look at the ServiceNow docs to see what fields we should be adding. So we've said here that we want it to return a count, I guess. And then we have to tell it where in the JSON data that comes back we actually want our count. Where is it label? There we go.
Great.
So now we've got 58.
So this is just a count of all incidents. We need to specify some additional information in this query to make it useful.
Okay.
So for instance, if we wanted to know the number of incidents raised in the last 3 months,
right,
then I've just got this data right here.
Okay.
So this is a ServiceNow query saying the created on date is greater than months ago 3.
Okay.
So this is ServiceNow specific. Oops.
Cool. So presumably you could also use that to say only for a specific team or only for these of a certain type or application or any other filters you want.
Yep. Or the status of the incidents, we could say only open incidents from the last 7 days or anything like that.
Okay, cool.
As you can see, our ServiceNow environment is not very busy at the moment.
Nope.
We just have 2 incidents raised.
Okay, that's a big 2 on a dashboard. Can we make that look a little better by giving it a title or something as well?
Yeah, of course.
Cool. That was pretty easy. Okay, so can you do the same thing for change requests?
Yep. So we're going to make 2 columns for this to have them side by side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really easy in our designer, isn't it?
Yep. Just snaps to get it into 2 identical columns.
Okay.
So we're going to essentially create the same tile here, but for change requests.
Mm-hmm. The other way that we could do this as well is you can clone tables. So in the top,
clone tiles.
Yeah, it's clone tiles. Sorry. So in the top right corner of each tile, there's a little like copy button. So we could also just copy that and change the appropriate values. But just to make sure we've sort of emphasized the point, you can see Sam creating this now. There we go. So it's saying at the bottom, no scalar data found. The reason it's saying that is because it needs to know where the actual result data is inside that object that comes back from the ServiceNow API. In this case, there's a field there called result that has the actual value in it. That's what we have to do. Cool. So that's nice and high impact. Now we can see immediately this is how we've been doing this month. Obviously, our environment's really good. Nothing ever breaks. So
yep,
it looks healthy there. Don't know why I'm angry all the time if it's always so healthy. Okay, but that's great. But now, okay, the immediate question is, what are those 6 change requests, or what's currently open? What are we actually dealing with today?
Yep. So let's create a grid tile for this.
Mm-hmm.
So this will allow us to get some more information relating to each of these change requests.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in this case, now we really want to see, like, just show me all the open change requests. Like, I don't care about the ones that have been closed already. I just want to see the ones that are currently open.
Yeah.
So you put a limit of 40 on there. Is that just to make the dashboard actually a bit more usable? Like if there were hundreds, this would be kind of a long list, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, if it turned out that this environment was actually huge and there was actually, 10,000 change requests being returned, then, maybe just seeing the most recent 40 is a little bit nicer than waiting, potentially minutes for your third-party service to return its data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. So active here refers to the fact there's a field on instance called active.
Yep.
So how did you know that was there?
Okay, so we'll jump straight into ServiceNow. Let's take a look at the REST API Explorer. So this is a really brilliant tool by ServiceNow, which helps you to construct queries like the ones that we use in Squared Up.
Mm-hmm.
We need to select a table. Not change place.
So many objects and tables. There we go. Right, and then you can see all the fields on the object.
Yep, so we get a huge list of fields here.
Mm-hmm.
And while we could use something like the state, which would have multiple values,
Mm-hmm.
fortunately active is a really nice little field which covers things that are open and in progress and a bunch of things, which essentially means these are what's happening right now,
Right.
and not something that's closed or resolved.
Okay, that makes sense. So a nice way of rolling up all the sort of states into one place.
Yep.
So I think it sort of exercises the point that you kind of need to know a bit about ServiceNow when you're doing this. So read the API documentation, or maybe engage your ServiceNow subject matter expert. If you're just the Squared Up guy or just the SCOM guy and you don't know this stuff.
Yeah, this can definitely be quite hard to find unless you're really looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
The really great thing about this is anything listed in the selected column,
Mm-hmm.
when you hit save, it's shown as the actual internal name of the field, which you can just copy and paste straight into
Nice.
ServiceNow. So if you were wondering, how do we get from this, created by with a space in the middle, does it have an underscore or a hyphen?
Mm-hmm.
That'll be displayed exactly how you need to copy and paste it
Perfect.
in the REST API Explorer.
That makes this nice and easy. So a nice quick turnaround.
If we just have all open.
Yep. So the reason we have to put result in here is, again, below you can see there's a result field that's coming back. So there's the table row is the word result, and then all those objects. That means it's returned a lot of changes here. So changing this key path, what we're doing is saying no, that actually the objects that should go in the table can be found under this result field, and there we go.
Okay, so this
That's a lot of
obviously
columns,
looks
Sam.
not very useful right now.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the grid designer, as you might have seen in previous videos.
Mm-hmm.
we could go through and disable all of these individually and get to just the data that we want.
Right.
But then ServiceNow will still be returning all of this data, and it just seems unnecessary to get this back when ServiceNow has a really nice query language which we can use to specify just the columns that we want.
Okay.
So right here in this fields, I could go through this now, but I just did this earlier. That's for incidents. Okay. So just to quickly demonstrate this, we'll have the ticket number,
Yep.
the state, who it was created by, the priority. That seems like a good thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, for me, I'm just picking out things that seem nice, but if you're actually intending on deploying this, then you'll probably want to pick out things recommended to you by a subject matter expert.
Yep. And obviously, like the person who's going to consume this dashboard. So I'm the boss. It's really important to me that I see the risk. So make sure you add that risk in and things like that.
Yep. We'll just have these for now.
Okay. So now we go back into the headers and data, don't we? Okay. And then we add in our ServiceNow. Hey, in my request, I also want to say, only show me these fields. There we go. That looks a bit better. It's still a bit sort of internal though, again, like I'm not a ServiceNow expert. I don't want to see like sys created by, what the hell does that mean? I actually want to be able to see.
Just going to replace that field with a slightly nicer one as well.
Okay.
All right. Great. Yep. So as you can see, these aren't exactly looking brilliant. We've got priority 3. Is that on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 100?
Is that like DEFCON value? 3 means it's
yep.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is add another parameter called display value. Oops. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. And as you can see, that's already changed quite a lot. We can see priority is actually 1 is critical and it's not 5 is critical. And the risk is now replaced with high, moderate, and low. As you can see, none of these seem to be low. These are all moderate risks.
That's much more user-friendly now. Again, like everyone understands the idea of a high risk rather than risk 2.
Yep.
Okay, so can we reorder this as well? Because I'd rather have the risk right at the start. I don't really care about the change number. So
yep. So we can just drag and drop these columns really simply. Risk at the start, maybe the ticket number. That might be useful.
Yep.
SysID, that looks a bit funny. Let's get rid of that.
Okay.
And this requested by, I don't remember these being requested by objects.
No,
so
I want the names there. So the reason that's happening is because ServiceNow has rich objects for users. It isn't just a name. It's actually, a user who has their own fields and properties. They have their telephone number, they have their email, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So how do we fix this?
Edit here, we can set a custom template. And it turns out the display value is just there. And there we go. We suddenly have names related to all of these change requests.
Excellent. So I can see you can. And also, can we change requested _ by? Because that's again not great.
So that doesn't look brilliant.
So you can rename it. Perfect.
Yep. So I'm just clicking into any of these. We can just immediately type in a new name, capitalize if that's what you like to do.
Okay, excellent. Now the other thing I want to do is, so let's just hit down on that second. Let's see what it looks like. So that's quite nice. A bit of a long dashboard, but if I see one of these that I want to be able to drill down into, okay, David Lewis requested this high risk here. I want to go and see the details of that.
You want to actually have a look at that? Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Let's add that capability right now.
Especially on dashboards like this, where it would be annoying to expose all the fields. Like I don't want to show the description, and when it schedules and everything else, there's just too many columns. But if I want to drill into something, how do I do that?
Yep. So we'll go back into ServiceNow for this and find an example change request.
Okay.
And what this will do is give us a single URL which we can start to use to have. 1 second. So it will give us an example URL, and we can see right here there's the system ID,
which we do have as a column. I remember you hid that.
Yeah. Okay. So it didn't look very useful, but then we can use it right here since it was returned by the request. And so for each of these columns, they now have a link with their system ID, and just clicking into any of these, we can now jump straight into that change request. And after a couple of seconds of loading, we can see,
That's not great.
got into a change request, and now we can, move it along, or in this case, review.
Brilliant. And this will work for anything in ServiceNow. So this could be for changes, incidents, any custom classes you've added. It's really irrelevant what you put in there. This mechanism works for all of that. Excellent.
Yep. So we can call this open change request.
Mm-hmm.
And there we go. That's a small overview of our ServiceNow environment.
Excellent. Okay, so that's great for creating top-level dashboards. Like, as the boss, I'm now happy, and the service desk as well, they can come in. They're mostly working in a monitoring tool, but they want to have an overview of what's sort of going on in the environment. They can come and see plan changes. Oh, look, this server's gone down. Did we actually have a change request open for that right now? And if we did, do we now need to raise an issue with problem management and say, okay, we were doing a change on something, it's now broken. Notify them to stop and revert and back out. But what if I only want to see this in the scope of a certain application or a certain server? Like, I'm a server level guy. I'm keeping my web server up and happy, and someone reports an issue with it. Can I see all the incidents that are currently relating to or affecting that particular server?
Yep. So this is a brilliant use of our perspectives.
Okay.
We already have coffee breaks on perspectives.
Mm-hmm. So like Squared Up is showing us all the monitoring data for a particular server. We can see this here. So we've got all the current connections to this web server and the various different health of all the components. And I don't want to have to leave it at this tool to go to another tool to see that information. That can take up a lot of time, especially when you're working in a high pressure scenario. Like, this is 2 a.m. I've been at this for a few hours now. I want to get this done and move on to something else.
Yep. So what we'll do is create a new perspective for this, just so that it's all nice and contained.
Mm-hmm.
But what you might want to do if you're actually deploying this is have the data right next to, say, performance data, or if you're looking at maybe recent change requests, like a new piece of software was installed and now the servers, now the RAM usage is up 50%.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, we'll be looking at incidents,
mm-hmm.
In particular, open incidents.
Yep. Again, we're going to query the table incident. So here, what we'll need to do, obviously, we need to add in some of the previous sort of filters we put in, like only show us a certain number of incidents, and that we only want to see sort of certain fields. But how are we going to make it so that it only displays incidents related to this particular computer?
So this is an interesting point. In our environment, we don't really have anything that links between ServiceNow and SCOM.
Right, there's no importing of data automatically, anything like that.
Yep, this is just a development instance, but what we do have is the computer name, and the computer name is in both.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can actually pull that out using the SCOM data and query against that. So I'll just demonstrate here.
Sure. So the double brace sort of syntax that Sam is using here, this is a squared up feature. It basically says when this dashboard is displayed, take whatever properties or values you have in there, compute those, and send them off to the query. So in this case, we're saying take the computer name from this particular computer object the dashboard's pointed at, and then show that. So if I went to a different computer, that would resolve to a different computer's name. So I guess the key point here is, as long as you've got some unique field in SCOM that you can match up to some unique field in ServiceNow, you can sort of perform this link.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Right, so that could be the computer name, or it could be if you've got like a asset ID number that you've extended SCOM with, like a lot of customers do.
Yep.
We could pair that. And presumably we could do this for like individual components, like a database, it's the same kind of thing, or applications as well, if we have some sort of unique name for them.
Yeah, especially, applications, they might have an ID, or, if they just have a unique name, then we can definitely query against that. Then you can get sort of, maybe distributed applications with a view specifically for ServiceNow. We've shown that before in previous webinars.
So I guess at that point it starts to become down sort of like, what's the source of truth in your environment? So is SCOM more accurate, or is ServiceNow more accurate? Okay, so that pulled through just the two. So we didn't get like 40 incidents this time.
Nope. It turns out that on this server in particular, we just have a couple of incidents.
Okay.
So now I can use my fields from earlier.
Okay. Excellent. So I can see I've got one. So let's say with this one here, let's put the incident state first, so I can see exactly how far it's actually moved along. That's fifth column down, incident state. Let's put that at the top. That's nice and easy to do. And then we'll have the number, and then let's say we'll have the urgency and priority next as well. So it's immediately easy to understand how important this thing is.
Yep.
And let's say, so that looks good. So clean those names up a bit. And again, we can do the row linking as well if you wanted to. So that would point out to the appropriate incident when I clicked on it. Okay, so can you show me for this incident who it's assigned to as well?
I can, but in this case, it does appear that neither of these incidents are assigned to anyone.
Okay, so we've just gone and berated our service desk for having incidents that weren't assigned to anyone. Probably explains why they're still open. So we've added in some fields, haven't we?
Yep, so we've added the assignment group right here.
Okay.
And there is an assigned to, which is still blank, but we're just waiting for the cache to refresh.
Okay. So that's actually worth noting that we do actually, Squared Up does actually cache these results. So rather than like if you have 100 people all looking at this dashboard at once, that would be pretty disastrous performance. And it would consume a lot of bandwidth. So instead what happens is ServiceNow stores those results and then refreshes them every 60 seconds, unless someone changes the parameters of the query, in which case it goes straight through immediately.
Yep, so this really helps to prevent rate limiting. So that's sort of the main issue. And great, we have our assigned to.
But again, it's showing us object again, so we need to do a bit of magic there to fix that.
Yep, so we just take the same steps as earlier. And now both of these are using the display value. And we can see this instant assigned to Bernard, who is in the network group.
Excellent. So now we can hit down on that and see our lovely perspective. So now we can actually see there's the open incidents. And tell you what, let's whack alerts on here as well, just to show side-by-side information with SCOM. There we go. So now you can get a sense immediately of how you can start creating these perspectives. And if we go to any other server, this perspective would also be available, but it would obviously show data specific that server. So let's go and look at the WebAPI example. I'm guessing there probably won't be any incidents open for that, but it just sort of shows the point. But instead of seeing those same incidents and those same alerts, we can now click on ServiceNow. And in this case, there weren't any for this particular server here because it's healthy. So now I can create like a template, right? So you can now apply this to Windows servers, and all the server team immediately get this. And you could do this for any particular technology. You could do this for all of your DAs if you created those for services as well. So show me all incidents or all changes related to this particular application along with outages, and then give that to your app teams and app owners.
Yep.
So hopefully this has given you sort of a bit of a sense of some of the stuff that we can do with integrating ServiceNow and Squared Up. As I said, if you haven't seen Squared Up before, and this is sort of your ServiceNow guy, and you're looking at this and thinking, yeah, actually this looks really cool, and all this monitoring data as well seems pretty impressive, then do take a look at our YouTube channel. Take a look at squaredup.com, where you can play around in a free demo lab as well. No sign up or email address required. And take a look at this and sort of see it live and see what you think of it. So I hope you found this video helpful today. Thank you very much, Sam, for walking us through all of this and helping me create those dashboards.
That's quite all right.
And thanks for watching, guys.